Hey guys, welcome to the start of what might be a very long series, which is going to be a Mountain Blade Warband playthrough on native. Now, I'm well aware of the merits of mods for Warband. I know there's a great modding community, there's lots of fun mods, of which I've played a bunch. Your Prophecy of Pandora's, your Florist, your Native Expanded, there's so many that I can't list them all, of course. But despite knowing all the benefits of them, one thing I've never actually just sat down and done is just beat the game in native. And I don't know if it's the sake of completionist or I just am kind of curious about it, but I kind of want to sit down and just actually try and beat the game, because usually I get either too distracted or like I'll stop playing and then not want to jump back into it when I come back. So I've gotten far in native before, but usually I've either switched to mods or stopped playing for a bit, that kind of thing. So I'm hoping by recording this, it'll be the correct amount of motivation to, hey, actually, finish this. So with that in mind, I am going to start a new game. Now, I do have a few ideas that I am sure about. I'm going to make my character here. I believe I usually just do all down the top. As far as certain variables that I want, there's a lot of choices you can do in Mountain Blade. It's a very sandboxy game. I think I'll probably just take this one. I want to say that's Prussia. Is that incorrect? It kind of reminds me of Prussia in any case. But I am going to do quitting and saving just because of the recording, which I know someone's going to say, you save scum and bastard, but sorry, I want to just make sure that I don't forever lose a recording or whatnot. So, as I was saying, there's a lot of variables and a lot of choices you can make in this game. It's like a sandbox to end sandboxes in a sense. There are a few things I do know that I want. I know what character build I'm going to do for myself. I know how I'm going to set up my companions, my heroes. Although I don't know which set of heroes I'm going to do. I'll talk about that later. I'm also not sure what kind of army I want to do as far as army composition. That's actually something I've been in threads for. I made a poll asking people what they might want to see or what they think is fun in general. Getting some general mixed results. Rodix, Swadia, and Nords are all pretty popular, as are the concept of doing combined forces. So I'm not sure quite yet what I'm going to do, but I can postpone that because I usually don't build an army very quickly at the start of a playthrough. Also, I'm not sure if I want to make my own faction or stick through being like a vassal of one of the factions, so like a loyal finish. I also don't know if I want to try and do any sorts of rebellions, which I know aren't directly related to either of those two things, because you can like set a rebellion off somewhere else but then finish with a different faction, or make yourself king in the new rebellion faction, blah blah blah. So I'm not really sure where I want to go politically. I'm not really sure where I want to go army wise strategically. I do know my personal plan here. I'm going to go in that in a sec. And like I said, I know the general layout for companions, but there's two main companion groups, if some of you are aware of that fact, I'm sure. Not sure which one. It'll probably depend on my political choice. If I'm going to go for a separate faction, there's usually one that's a lot better than the other. So, as far as personal build goes, I'm probably going to disappoint a few of you in that I'm going to play a horse archer character. I don't know how unpopular they are by virtue of being really popular. So like a kind of contrarian sense here. But it's my opinion that not only is horse archery in this game really fun, it's arguably one of the ways that you, as an individual character, can force multiply the most. Like, sure, you can do a shitload damage in melee in this game. There's no doubt about that. But you can already do that as a horse archer character. You just put points into power strike and glide your way through. While like without the option of archery, especially horse archery, your maximum potential, just to me personally, seems a lot lower as far as what you can accomplish. Because some of the skills then transfer into sieges. The ability for you to be doing outputting a massive amount of range damage, both in field battles and sieges, can make it so that you're killing like stupidly high amounts of guys individually. While you can do that in grinding fights in Melee, you can't do it to the easy extent, I would say. So I guess I'm going to crutch, as some might say, and go back on that build. But what can I say? I really enjoy it, so that's what's going to happen. So, base concepts here. I do, with a lot of games, Mountain Blade is no exception, I jot down a lot of character creation notes as far as build optimization, and I already have a layout that I enjoy. I'm probably going to do a different separate video on character creation and build optimization solo, but here's just a very broad overview. As far as attributes are concerned, this is how I plan to do it. Charisma, I'm not going to touch until the end, as in, I'm not going to touch it until the other 3 stats are set how I like. That is why, at the start, when I was doing the character creation options there, I picked most of the noble options to get my charisma up to 9, just because charisma is kind of useful, but it's not useful enough to the point where I'm going to focus on it, so I'm just giving myself the starting boost. Intelligence, there is totally a ton of merit towards a huge high intelligence character, just because you can get not only more skills, but you can hit some pretty important ones. The thing is, a lot of it can get mitigated by proper party layout. You can make your companions just total skill monkeys, and that usually, if you do it correctly, sets you up quite well. I'm going to get intelligence to 12. That's because I believe 12 is the highest intelligence you need in order to read all of the skill books. I'm going to try and collect all the skill books because they're free points. Levels are eventually going to get a little tight, but skill books, they're all over the place. I think technically because I can't remember if I need 11 and the intelligence book gets me to 12, or I need 13 and the intelligence book gets me from 12 to 13. Either way, I'll double check, but the general gist is intelligence is around 12 to 13. As far as intelligence skills are concerned, I'm going to get all of the party-based skills, like tactics and pathfinding and all that. I'm going to get them to either 1 or 2. If I'm getting them to 1, that means there's a skill book for the skill. How the skill system works when it's a party skill is you take whatever's the highest in your party, that is your current, and then you can give a bonus by having yourself a high skill in it. The starting way for you to give +1 to your party bonus is to have 2 in a skill. So I'm going to go bare minimum of assistance there and get 2 in the relevant skills. As far as charisma is concerned, because I didn't touch on it, there's only a few charisma skills. They're all relatively important. Prisoner management, leadership, trade. But I'm pretty much only leadership's important. It's already maxed out. Prisoner management is good once you start getting prisoners, but you can kind of hold off on it until then, except bare minimum amounts. So I'm not going to touch much of charisma, but the general gist is when you're upgrading charisma, prisoner management, and leadership are the things you upgrade. Intelligence, like I said, I'm going to improve all the party skills to 1 or 2 as necessary. I might improve the leader only skills like inventory management, or the personal skills like persuasion. Those are where extra points are going if necessary. So hopefully that wasn't super confusing. Next is agility. Now agility, I'm going to get a bare minimum of 12, an ideal amount of 18, and extra points, it could go higher. Why 12? 12 is important because that gets you to riding 4. Riding 4 is the requirement to ride chargers or Saranid heavy war horses. The arguably the best horses in the game. Optimally, it's 18 agility because then you can ride champion horses, although I usually don't like to force myself to assume I'm going to get champion horse because like that's a modifier that can go away if the horse dies, so it's a bit more debatable. So at least 12, 18 at optimal levels. If I for some reason I'm level like 50, 60 or something, might start putting more points into it. As far as skills are concerned, I believe Weapon Master is pretty much a waste of points. Unfortunately, I already do have 2 points here, but generally speaking, you do not need Weapon Master because you're just going to actually be using your weapon. And Weapon Master doesn't actually improve your speed at which you learn skills. It's just giving you weapon points, essentially. So that is not going to be a priority. Shields, I'm probably not going to use shields. I might carry one, but it's not going to influence really my decision to actually level up shields. Athletics, I'm probably just going to throw to the wayside. I'm going to be mostly a mounted character. And in siege battles, usually, and I know this isn't entirely accurate, but usually the improved moderate amount of speed you get from athletics isn't super critical in siege battles because you're not usually moving that often. Riding, like I said, 4 at the bare minimum is a requirement. Optimally, you're at 6. The rest is gilding the lily. It's nice, but not necessary. Horse archery, I'm going to equal it with whatever my agility is. So if I'm at 12, it's 4. If I'm at 18, it's 6. I usually don't find there's a huge discrepancy there between like 4 and 6 as far as how it affects your ability. If it's really noteworthy, you just have to start doing start and stop a lot more for shooting. If you're up to your masterwork bow and you have all your equipment, sometimes you can feel the wonkiness of your horse archery going, so sometimes then it's time to upgrade it. But besides that, not that important. Looting, I'm leaving that to a skill monkey. That's not going to be important for me. That's all the agility. Like, I think I've covered everything else up to here. So lastly, strength. Strength is the priority skill here for me, just because it's, I don't know if I'm going to say the most useful, but it's the least likely to not be useful. The 3 main skills that I'm going to be using, Iron Flesh, Power Strike, Power Draw, they're all pretty helpful. I know some people argue about the merits of Iron Flesh, that the extra health isn't that big of a deal. It's only 20 extra health, blah, blah, blah. But since Power Strike and Power Draw, I am going to be upgrading to max. The idea of you level up in intervals of 3 means that it's good to have 3 skills that you're leveling up together. So Iron Flesh, Power Strike, Power Draw, welcome to the team. We're all going up to 30. So strength is going to be the first thing that's going to be maxed. I might focus on agility earlier just to get my riding and horse archery up to 4 and 4. But after that, it's start pumping strength. Iron Flesh and Power Strike, I don't really feel like I need to explain why they're good. More health, don't die. Power Strike, do more damage. There's pretty much no cap there. Power Draw, there is the idea of it's only up to 4 plus your Power Draw, but ideally I'm going to be using a Warbow. At my best, I am going to be trying to scrounge around for a Masterwork Warbow, which is Power Draw 8, which means you can get up to 10 Power Draw to be useful for you, which obviously the more the better in that case. I'm sure there's some sort of argument about, oh, well, if you consider break points, you only need 8 or 9 points. I haven't really looked into the hyper details of the math there, but just generally going to assume the more the better. So that is the general gist here. Like I said, I might start by putting points into agility first a bit, then strength, that kind of thing. For the time being, it's not super critical. Like, for example, I was thinking I might just do this just to get 1 extra skill point. Not sure, though. We will see. As far as weapons are concerned, I'm going to be using probably a one-handed weapon on horseback, most likely the War Cleaver, just because I find that's the best combination of reach, speed, and damage. There is arguments for using certain two-handed weapons, but you have to remember two-handed weapons and I believe one-hand, two-hand pole arms, the ones that are usually useful, receive something like a 20 to 25 to 30%, I think it's 25% penalty to both your weapon speed and your weapon damage, so they're not as ideal as you might think. I believe some of them still are better, like if you use the Great Long War Axe or whatever the hell it's called. I think that technically still does more damage, but I usually find the one-handed weapons feel more fluid. You don't look like you're swinging through water every time you swing. So I'm probably going to be using a War Cleaver. If I end up doing siege battles, which I probably will, I might bring along a two-handed weapon or a polearm. Probably the Great Long War Axe or the Great Bardiche, I believe they're called. Pretty much just the heaviest two-handed weapon you can, because on horseback you don't really need a shield, but I'm using a one-hander to not be at a penalty. On foot, there's no reason to be using a one-hander by itself in this game, so I'll be switching to either one-handed and shield, which I'll probably use the steel shield, or I'll switch to the two-handed weapons I mentioned. Archery I already mentioned. Going to be using the warbow, ideally a masterwork one. Not touching crossbows, not touching throwing, so those can be ignored. As far as everything else is concerned, I believe that's the general gist, so let's just get started here. Put in my name, get the same name as that paladin from the Diablo playthrough. I'm putting points into archery even though I'm going to be using it, just because, why not? It's not a huge deal. Like I said, weapon points are not the main way you upgrade skills in this game anyways. So, let's look at this here. So, I'm going to want... Power strike's already really high. I'm going to want my power draw to be as high as possible, and my horse archery to start catching up here. Probably going to want to make sure my riding gets to 12 as soon as possible. So I'm probably going to just pump all my points into it. Like I said, I'm just going to put it into archery to start the process faster. And besides that, I think we're good to go. So like I said, about 30 here, about 12 or 18 here, 12 I believe it's here, and then anything left. Put a charisma, that's way down the line. I know I've been talking a lot, so let's actually play the game. I'm just going to really quickly go through this. I usually just pick sure. Sure, let's do that. Okay, starting kingdom, not a huge deal because like I said, I'm not going to actually pick my kingdom yet. Usually I go Swadia or Rodix just because the Swadia I always find seems to have a higher percentage of looters. Rodix have mountain bandits. Either way, I'm going to be traveling all over the place because of my early game strategy, which I'll obviously explain in the future. So let's just go. Let's just say Rodix for now. Like I said, not super critical to my actual strategy here because I'm going to be traveling along. So any other faction fans, do not worry. I'm not damning you just yet. And we start off with a total miss of a crossbow because I'm bad. Oh. So, I don't know if I actually covered it. I probably didn't. God, I should just kill this guy already. Holy shit. He is on point. Oh, that was longer than I thought, but whatever. Didn't die, didn't embarrass myself completely. I know I was playing a little skittish there, but I was trying to talk and I was trying to think. So, Dr. Mr. Merchant here, I'm interested, blah, 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 and we're good. So, one thing I don't think I mentioned, I'm playing with these difficulty settings. Now, the only thing that might be amiss here is combat speed. That's just because I've been playing on normal for a very long time, So it's kind of the speed I've gotten used to. I know there's some people who think fastest is more realistic or more challenging or blah, blah, blah. But at this point, I'm just so ingrained playing on normal that I'm worried that if I switch to a higher speed, my parry timings and all that will just be completely shot. So I'm just going to avoid doing that and keep things on normal for now. Hopefully you understand. Besides that, you can see these settings right there. So we are in the game. Hooray for new starts. So we have our basic gear here. Always going to be useful. We should probably save now that we are actually in a game here. And there's a ton of ways to start out the game as far as what's good options for setting yourself up well for the future. Generally speaking, what I like to do is I want to... Wow, that is a real kick in the teeth. On my other playthrough, I looked so long for a Masterwork Warbow. I traveled over and over and over again trying to find it. It took me forever. And of course, first city, first store. The item I want. Of course, I cannot get it right now. So hopefully our luck continues in the future and I'll just be able to get it. As far as what I was trying to say, I usually like to travel along to tournaments. I go into tournament searching mode. I go and fight. I maximum bet myself. I win the tournament to get the money. And then I start building up my personal equipment while simultaneously going to all the cities and recruiting followers. Like I said, I'm not sure which of the two groups of followers I'm going to be recruiting. That might be a decision I'll have to make soon. After I get the equipment I want, if I start amassing way too much money, I start buying properties to improve my revenue. That's the kind of setup I like to do because that early in the game, you don't have any responsibilities. You don't have extra units you have to worry about. You don't have wars you need to be fighting. So you can just focus purely on improving your character. Also, it has the added benefit of when you are pretty much by yourself or with your companions, you don't really need to worry about people disbanding because even if you, as long as you keep winning against bandits and whatnot, your companions are never going to leave. They're never going to die, unlike other recruits. And when you're such a small group, bandits will attack you more. And that might seem like a bad thing, but generally speaking, a horse archer, as long as you're not fighting against forest bandits and you're pretty good and or lucky on enemy compositions, you won't have a lot of archers to deal with. And in Mountain Blade, if you're on horseback against foot people, you pretty much have free reign of engagements. So you can usually finesse your way through I did not mean to do this. You can usually finesse your way through combat encounters. So Praven, Tulga, and Cherise. So we're probably going to want to head towards those. Cherise is over there, Praven's over there, Tulga is down here. So I guess I will go to Cherise first. So like I was saying, generally I like to stick pretty low on armies and whatnot at the very start of the game, just because I like to set up myself personally. It allows you to kill people more personally, which improves your experience rate. I just find it's a good way to set yourself up in the early game. You don't try and rush immediately into building armies. Now, that might be boring for some people, which is totally fair. I'm going to fight against these guys here. It's totally fair to think that, but I think it's important to actually set yourself up well for the future. So we're up against a bunch of looters here. Pretty self-explanatory. Just don't get hit in the face by throwing rocks and you should be fine. Looters are poorly armored, poorly equipped, blah blah blah. Pretty much having a horse means you're better than looters. So, oh my god. If I could stop sucking, that would be a good start. But it's really pretty boring, but this is pretty much all you need to do. against looters at the start of the game is you just say, hey, I have a crossbow. Do you have a crossbow? No. Well, I have a horse, so I'm just going to keep doing this. And as long as you don't accidentally walk yourself into a wall, you should be good to go. The throwing rockmen, I guess, will eventually slow themselves down trying to stop the throw. That they'll kind of be inconsequential as long as you're not constantly running at the opponent. So that allows you to essentially just funnel these guys towards you over and over again. Again, cheesy, perhaps, but effective, there is no doubt. So I'm just going to do this. Eventually their morale will be pretty shit and they'll start running away. And that allows you to switch to melee, potentially, and start cutting them down. But you have to be aware of the fact that they will potentially rally and just keep running at you. So I'm going to be really safe about this probably, and just keep shooting. Enjoy that. Like I said, this is the idea of essentially hunting bandits by yourself is really good for XP because you get all the kills as yourself. You don't need to share anything. Once you start getting companions, though, they'll probably die early, which is fine, but they get the shared XP at the end, which allows you to level them up without direct combat experience. So let's see if I can land a moving shot here. Yeah, I can. Hooray. So, there we go. I believe that was all of them. So I'm going to be pretty much doing that kind of stuff for a bit. I'm not sure if I'll show all of it because you pretty much, once you see one, you've seen most of these fights. There's pretty much just the don't get shot in the face hope of as far as fighting against ranged mobs. But besides that, these are really straightforward encounters. The only time you're really in danger, I would say, is at the start, at least, against forest bandits who have a high density of ranged attackers, which makes this whole strategy of just kite them along like a bunch of dopes less effective. Sea raiders are harder to kill. They can potentially surprise you when you go for... wow, I am aiming really high. They can potentially surprise you when you try and go into melee with a surprise really powerful attack. They also have some ranged units themselves. Any of the cavalry, you want to wait until you are more well equipped than them. After that, it becomes a bit easier because they can't really kill you unless they get like a couched lance into you or your horse. You can kind of just weather the storm as long as you keep moving. That goes for both desert bandits and steppe bandits. So usually those are the worst places to try and fight, although it can be good later on to go after them because you can get easy access to free horses for your companions. Similarly, sea raiders are good for early game equipment for you or your party members. The rest, mountain bandits, pretty easy. The Taiga bandits or whatever, Tundra bandits, I forget what they're called in Warband. Also relatively easy. So, usually they're not a huge deal. Deserters is a really mixed bag. Usually mass infantry, once you're good at horse archery, you can just slowly take them all down. While with heavy cav, you need to be way more careful. Like, don't take on a group of men-at-arms or knights or something solo. That's usually a bad sign because they can just box you in. Mass archers is usually bad. Mass cavalry is usually bad. Infantry is the only real deserters you want to always take on, I would say. So, like I said, this is basically a general concept of how to get easy XP at the start. You can do it with a crossbow or with a bow at the start, whatever you have access to. Since I did the noble start, I had access to crossbows, so I was taking advantage of that. The best crossbow, arguably, for horseback is I'm sorry if I'm save scumming. I'm just worried about it game crashing. The best crossbow for mounted combat is light crossbow. The best crossbow on foot is the siege crossbow, which is arguably one of the things you can give your companions if they're on foot. You can give them that for sieges or for foot combat if you're doing like a gun line Roddick crossbow army or something. It can be a good choice. But usually once you start getting the skills for it, it's usually good to get a bow eventually, because bows allow you to fire a lot faster. Unlike this, for example, where I am pretty much just shooting once every like 5 seconds, even with ideal maneuvering here. So it just allows you to really start mowing down the enemy. But in the interim before that happens, perfectly fine to just use a crossbow and cheese your way through it. I'm gonna try and move away from the throwing rocks. I'm being overly cautious. Usually the rocks aren't too dangerous. Even if you do get hit in the face, you don't take that much damage. But I'd rather just take no damage, although I did just take 1, so I guess I failed. But they're rarely a threat. Once you get a decent helmet, even less so. Looters are probably like just the freest of XP, but of course, eventually you'll find the 38 you get from killing them just not that helpful. But for the time being, every point counts. You do need to be careful that if you are really careful or careless, you can get kind of chopped down by a falchion. They do a decent amount of damage, a surprising amount, I would say. But besides that, nothing to worry about. This kind of thing is pretty much impossible to do on foot. That's why it could be seen as pretty cheesy. You're essentially just abusing the fact that as a horse, as a mounted unit, you have pretty much unlimited mobility and choice of when you're wanting to fight. See, I was being a little greedy there. You want to duck in and out of the fights. Unfortunately, if you're really predictable about it, they will eventually just start parrying your attacks. Nothing to be done about that. There is a legitimate idea towards using an axe for if you're fighting against, if you know you're going to be fighting against shielded enemies, just because then you can break their shields faster. But I'm usually just alright with, he took a big chunk out of my horse there, dick. But as I was saying, usually if you're not always against Huskarls or something, it's less important. I guess I should put on a hat, huh? Also, usually, yeah, nomad boots end up being better. I'm cycling out the gear here, but as far as store prices are concerned, it's usually negligible, the difference. But I am just going to head over to Shree's. I might call it there, and just as a point for me to potentially start dividing this up into new videos. I don't know what my ideal time frame is going to be for each video, just because I don't really have a point of reference. In the past, it was when you finished a quest in Diablo 2, but this, I don't really know. Is it after I level a certain amount of times? Is it 30-minute segments? I don't know. So I might just end it here. We'll start off the next video probably with the tournament in Shree's, see how we do there, and we'll see you guys in the next one.